Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about some popular books that I personally didn't like. I do want to say at the beginning of this, like I do in all of the videos that I do like this, these are just my opinions. Obviously, like if you love these books, that's great. I'm not saying that you shouldn't like these books or you shouldn't read these books. These are just ones that are super hyped that I myself didn't end up loving. So let's just get right into the books. So first up is actually an entire series, and that is the Summer I Turned Pretty series by Jenny Han. I feel like with the show coming out this summer, this was like one of the it books of the summer. I finally picked up the series. I will say I did enjoy the first two books, but I think the third book actually just ruined the entire series for me to the point that I would never go back and reread this. And I was just really sad about it. I don't know. It takes a twist that I felt like it didn't need to. I don't really feel like there needed to be a third book even. Like, I just didn't like how it played out. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way about that last book, but I just really couldn't get past that. And like I said, it literally tainted my thoughts on all of the earlier books as well. And I don't think I could ever go back and read this. I think I would be open to watching the show. I think I just need to give myself some time to sort of forget what happened in the books so that I can differentiate the show from the books. But this was unfortunately one that, like I said, I didn't end up really liking. Next was Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I sort of feel like this applies to almost this whole series, or at least the three that I've read so far. I just don't get the hype around these books at all. I think the plot lines in these are all very basic, but especially Twisted Games I think really sort of drove that home for me. Like, it was very simple in its plot line, and it was definitely something that has been done a ton of times before and just wasn't interesting. I think honestly the reason this series gets as much hype as it does is the smut is not terrible, and I think that is what the driving force in like TikTok picking this up is. But like as a whole, like as a book, I find that these aren't anything super special. They're very sort of standard for anyone who reads a lot of romance. And so just ones that weren't really my favorite. I did give most of these, I think, like 3 stars. Like, I didn't absolutely hate them. They weren't the worst books on the planet, but they definitely were not ones that lived up to the hype. Next is the Calloway Sisters series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. And when I say that, I literally mean just the Calloway Sisters series. I think the Addicted books were great. I loved them. I loved Lily and Lo. I loved seeing all the other characters in those books. But even though, like, Reid and Daisy were my favorite couple in the Lily and Lo books, I found that when I actually got Reid and Daisy's books, I was very disappointed in them. They were just so long and nothing interesting happened in them. And I just was getting really bored. Honestly, when I look back, I'm honestly shocked I even made it through this entire series. I did DNF Some Kind of Perfect, so maybe I didn't totally make it through, but I did get like 70% into that one before DNFing too. But I just felt like these books were unnecessary and sort of like almost like they were written, and when the author started writing them, they had no idea what they were going to write at all. Like, they were just like, okay, we need to write a book, let's do it. And that's sort of the vibe I get from those books, especially the last one. I think it was called Long Way Down. It's the one, it's Reid and Daisy's last book. It's the last one before the epilogue book. I found that that one really bothered me because I think in that book we got 5 different scenes of Reid rock climbing, and I just really didn't care about that. And then we have Daisy, who, you know, has just sort of said that she is going to find a new career and is excited about this new career, and she, you know, tells everyone what that career is, and it's very exciting. But then you never hear anything about that again. It comes up like maybe once or twice as like an offhanded like comment, but it was like something that probably should have been like consuming her entire life, and we just didn't get any of that. And in a 700-page book, I feel like we should have had more information about one of the, you know, main characters. And I didn't find that the character development was as great as everyone says it is in these books. To me, like when I was reading the epilogues, or like the epilogue book and the epilogues, I found that 29 or 30-year-old Lily acted the exact same as 19-year-old Lily. Like, there was no differences. She's still like piggybacking on Lo at that point, and I was just kind of like, okay, I can't actually imagine like a 30-year-old couple doing that. Like, to me, like, that just doesn't happen. And so to me, like, the development wasn't there. They still seemed like the exact same people they were in the first books. And like, I get that, yeah, you're going on like this journey with them, and so maybe it seems like there's development because you've seen a lot of their lives, but I feel like as characters they were all still very much exactly the same as they started. And so that was like underwhelming for me, and definitely one that I would say was a big letdown based on how much hype there is surrounding these books. Next is Daisy Haites specifically, but honestly probably the whole Magnolia Parks universe. I think these books are so overrated. Like, I thought the first one was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I couldn't tell if I loved or hated it when I finished it, because I did think that I was invested in the story and I felt like, you know, I cared what happened to them, and that was like a good sign. But I also hated how the book was sort of playing out. But when I got to Daisy Haites, I was like, okay, no, like I definitely hate this book. I gave Daisy Haites 1.5 stars. I hated how it was written. I hated the plot line. I hated that it was basically like a carbon copy of Magnolia Parks, just with the characters' names changed. Like, it was so similar that I was like, why are we even getting this story when it's the same thing that we just read? And the footnotes in this killed me. The nicknames, the text messaging. I have a whole video. I think it's not out yet, but I think it's actually coming out tomorrow when this video is released. And it's a whole video on the series and my thoughts on it. But there were a lot of things I didn't like about this book, and it's definitely one that I've seen hyped a lot, and one that I personally will never revisit. I won't be purchasing. I just honestly didn't vibe with any aspect of this book. The characters, the writing, the plotline, I hated all of it. And so because of that, I definitely think this was one that was way overhyped for me. Next was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I feel like I've talked about this one a lot and why I didn't like it. But this one, I feel like, based on how hyped Taylor Jenkins Reid is in general, I was expecting her books to be truly, like, phenomenal. Like, I wanted to be blown away, like, couldn't believe what I just read kind of situation. And so far, both of the books I've read by her were just kind of mediocre, and I really don't get why she's getting all the hype that she gets, to be honest. But I read this book, and I was expecting this to be completely gut-wrenching. Like, I was expecting this to be like an emotional roller coaster from beginning to end. If you haven't heard of this book, it follows a woman who is married, and then her husband goes missing in, I think it's a helicopter accident, and he's presumed dead. So she moves on with her life. She gets engaged to another guy, and it's now like a year or two later, and her original husband sort of shows up, and he's like, hey, I didn't die, like I was trying to come back to you. And she's like, whoa, okay. So now she's engaged to this other guy, and her original husband is back, and she's kind of deciding between the two. I was expecting this to be, like I said, incredibly emotional, with her trying to sort of decide, you know, do I go with the guy that I originally married, or is this guy better for me? Or, you know, like just being distraught, sort of stuck between the two of them. And I never really got that vibe reading that. I found this was very shallow. I also hated one of the guys right from the start of the book, and I feel like that swayed my thoughts the entire time. Like, I was never torn between the two. I knew who I wanted her to get with the entire time, and I also just like felt like she didn't really care. Like, I remember reading the end of this, and whatever she used to decide, there was like a moment where she realizes like who she's supposed to be with, and I remember reading that scene and just kind of being like, really? That's how you're gonna make this decision? And it was so underwhelming and like unemotional, and I just like genuinely didn't care. And it shocked me, honestly, that this is like the book that everyone's been talking about, because I honestly feel like I read a different book from everybody else. And I just think Taylor Jenkins Reid honestly is not for me, because like I said, everyone hypes up her stuff and I've never really liked any of it. I find it's all very like bland and just basic. Next is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This one was a big letdown for me. As a kid, I loved the Spiderwick Chronicles series, and Holly Black co-wrote that, so I kind of was, you know, seeing The Cruel Prince around, and I was like, okay, you know, it's hyped, it's a fantasy romance, I love a good romance, love fantasy romance, so I was like, you know what, I'll give this a shot. It's an author that I've read before and really enjoyed, and I picked this up, and honestly was kind of shocked. There is like no romance in here. I don't know why this is being pushed as a fantasy romance series. I read the first 2 books, and honestly, like very minuscule romance content. Like, I was genuinely, again, feeling like I was reading the wrong book, like that compared to what everyone else was talking about, because it just had no romance in it, like at all. By the end of the second book, I was like, okay, we have gotten absolutely nowhere, nothing has happened, and I just really don't care. And so I ended up stopping after the second book, because to me this isn't a fantasy romance series. This is a YA fantasy series in general. And that's fine, but like I don't get why people are saying it's a fantasy romance, because to me it's just really not. And so I didn't love that one. I was really sad about it. I'm kind of wondering if maybe the co-author of the Spiderwick Chronicles was the author I actually might like. So I've thought about, you know, seeing if he's got any other books out that I might enjoy, but this one just definitely wasn't for me. Next was The American Roommate Experiment, and I feel kind of bad putting this book in this video because I've done this video once before and I know the Spanish love deception was in it. But this was another one. I have really tried with Elena Armas. I truly have. I don't know what y'all are seeing in her books. I really don't. I found this one was incredibly boring. Like, when I'm filming this right now, I read this probably like 2-3 weeks ago. I cannot tell you anything about this book other than I remember that it's the cousin of the girl from the first book, and he ends up in this apartment with this other girl who isn't supposed to be there. And they sort of like go on fake dates, but they're not fake dating. It's like because she's writing a book or something. And I don't know, it was very long, very boring. I wasn't interested in what was going on for the majority of the book, and yet I still see this one being hyped up almost as much as the Spanish Love Deception. I know this one isn't as hyped, especially since this didn't even make it to the final round of the Goodreads Choice Awards this year, but I just feel like this was just not good, and everyone's still like, I see so many 5-star ratings for these books, and I'm like, are we reading different books, like genuinely, because I feel like that's not what I read. And just didn't like it. I have decided since reading this book that like I will no longer be picking up her new releases, because I sort of chalked up the Spanish Love Deception to her, you know, self-publishing, not having a good editor, and I think if that book had been like really thoroughly edited, I might have enjoyed it. But this book I can honestly say there was like no hope for, because I'm sure she had the whole team of editors and, you know, whatever on this book, and it was still super long and boring, so I don't think I will be revisiting her anytime soon. But that was definitely one that I feel like was overhyped for sure. Next was Pretty Little Savage by Lucy Smoke, and this one kind of surprised me because I've seen this one around quite a bit, and you know I love a good bully romance, so I was like, you know what, I will check this one out. And I did, and it was just really boring. Like, I don't know. This book is one of those ones where the girl in it is constantly telling you what a, you know, strong, independent woman she is, and yet at the same time doing incredibly stupid things. And that was really frustrating for me. She also does say multiple times in this book that she's not like other girls or not like most girls or whatever. And I was just like, okay, like, you were too far gone in that area for me. And she would constantly say how these boys weren't going to control her and blah blah, and then simultaneously doing whatever they told her to. Like, they'd be like, oh, come to this party, and she'd be like, okay. And I was like, you literally just said you weren't going to do whatever they told you to do, and now here you are doing it again. And I just really hated it. I hated her as a person. I didn't find that she was, you know, like the strong, independent female lead. She was literally just stupid and annoying. And so I didn't love that, and didn't love the book in general, which was really sad because I've been trying so hard to get you guys another bully romance rec video, because I know that's like my most requested video all the time, but I've just read so many flops lately that I don't have enough to film it yet. But hopefully sometime in the new year I will be able to get that for you, because I do want to film another one. It's just a lot of them haven't been working out for me, and this was definitely one of them. Next was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and this one like kind of hurts me to say. I wasn't the biggest fan of Beach Read. Like, I thought it was good, but I didn't think it deserved all the hype it was getting, but I could see like why people liked it. People We Meet on Vacation I absolutely loved. Book Lovers, I don't know. I didn't care. I felt like it was women's fiction. It was mostly about her relationship with her sister and didn't really highlight the romance too well. And I hated the ending. I remember that. I don't even remember what the ending was, but I remember absolutely hating it, and having trudged through the entire book of women's fiction to get to that ending was, I remember, so disappointing. And this one, I can't believe how popular this one is and how many people give this 5 stars. Sometimes I sort of feel like people just see Emily Henry's name on the cover and give it 5 stars just because. Same with Colleen Hoover. But I don't know. I just didn't like this one. I haven't talked to anyone that thought this was like a really great romance, so I really don't know what's up with that. But it won the Goodreads Choice Award, so obviously someone out there is reading this and loving it, but I haven't met them. I personally did not enjoy it, thought it was super overhyped. I'm hoping her next book is a little bit better. I'm hoping there's like a pattern where maybe I like every second one of her books, because I did like People We Meet on Vacation, and Happy Place does sound like something I would like, so I'm hoping that that is the case. Next is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This one wasn't so much like the worst book ever, but it was definitely one that I had seen so hyped that I was expecting to absolutely fall in love with it, and I just didn't. When I'm filming this, I read this book last week, and I genuinely cannot tell you what happened in it. Like, I don't remember it at all. I know it was a small town. I want to say she had a kid, but like genuinely I can't remember anything that happened in this book. I thought it was okay. It was like a small town romance, and that was really all it is. It's super long for absolutely no reason, and it just wasn't like as exciting as I was expecting, and it wasn't even as like small towny as I was expecting. I love a good small town romance, and I found this one was just really generic. Like, there's nothing about this town that sticks in my head, and to me, what I love about a small town romance is usually I can picture the town and like the little shops in it, or the farms, or like whatever people are doing. Like, I have that whole image in my head of what this town looks like, and I don't have any of that from this book. Like, it was so generic and just like standard, you know, small town things going on that it just didn't even stick in my head. And honestly, I just think this one was really overhyped. Didn't love it. But like I said, not the worst book of all time, but it's just I don't think it was like the best book ever either. So that one was definitely a disappointing read as well. And so those are all of the books for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I'm currently doing new book videos every single day for the month of December, and I will see you next time.